I first started learning Hmong, classifiers were something very difficult, and I wanted to do this video to help make them easy to understand. So in this video, we'll answer two questions. One, what are classifiers? What do they do? Why do we need them? And two, what are some of the basic guidelines for using classifiers? When do we use them? So first of all, let's answer the question, one, why do we need noun classifiers? What do they do for us? What is their purpose? For starters, we call them noun classifiers because in Hmong, noun classifiers specifically change a noun. They go before nouns, not verbs or adjectives or other words. They serve the purpose of making a noun more specific or clarifying the meaning of a noun. Now we'll talk about how a noun classifier does that in three different ways, and then we'll use examples to help make it easier to understand. So the three ways that a noun classifier makes something more specific or clarifies the meaning is by one, differentiating between homonyms, which are two words with the same spelling but different meaning, two, adding a depth of meaning to the noun, or three, making a noun more specific. So what do we mean by that? Let's look at some examples. First of all, homonyms. So in the Hmong language, the word zi can have a few different meanings. It can mean father, it can mean fruit, or it can mean husband. How do we know which is which? It's the same spelling. Well, we use a noun classifier before the noun. So for example, first of all, the word leng is a classifier, a noun classifier for people, specifically people, and it's somewhat intimate. So leng zi would be your father. You use leng before the word zi, and it turns it from sort of a vague word, we're not sure what it means, to father specifically. Now, do, the classifier do, refers to people, animals. We use it for a number of different things, but in this case, when you say do zi, it refers to husband. So that's the word for husband. Just changing the classifier gives it that specific, definite meaning. And then finally, lo is a classifier for general objects, for round objects. It's used for abstract things. But in this case, we use it before lo zi to refer to a fruit. So a noun classifier can separate between homonyms. So secondly, a noun classifier can add depth of meaning. Well, let's take the word ndao. Ndao, for example. Ndao can mean letters, it can mean paper. When we add different noun classifiers before it though, it gives it more specific meaning related to that same thing. So for example, cha ndao refers to a postal letter. Cha is used as a classifier for postal letters. Another example is the classifier pao ndao. That changes it from letters to a book, or the book. Pao is a classifier for stacks of things, usually papers, or in this case, a book. Another example is do. Now, if we add the word bei, which is kind of specific to this example, but bei ndao, when we add the classifier do, so do bei ndao, bei means name, but when you put it in there, it colloquially means a letter, like a letter of the alphabet. So when we add the classifier do, referring to a short or single thing, in this case, do bei ndao means a letter of the alphabet. So we can take something that's general, a general noun, and when we add noun classifier, suddenly we have a much more specific meaning in the same category. Now, a third thing that noun classifiers do is they add specificity, or they make something more specific. And this makes sense when you take the noun classifier away, when you compare both having it and not having it, as to why we use them. So let's take an example. If someone were to say, gu nie che, now you notice I like, and then car is a noun, but there's no noun classifier. We would translate that as I like cars. I like cars, because you're not specifically pointing at one car. Without the noun classifier, you're just generally talking about cars. Now, when you add the word lo to that sentence. Gu nia, lo che, gu nia, lo che. Now, that word becomes almost like the word the in English. I like the car. In any case, that word, that noun classifier makes something specific. It's like it points. So to review, noun classifiers make something more specific, as in like pointing to a specific noun, as opposed to nouns in general. They help differentiate between homonyms, two words that have the same spelling but different meaning. And they also add depth of meaning to a noun, giving it a more specific meaning in the same category. So when should you use a noun classifier? Right now we'll talk about 6 general guidelines to help you understand when it's necessary to use a Hmong classifier. Of course, there's exceptions, but these are the basics and they cover most scenarios. So first of all, number 1, one of the easiest ways to know that you need to use a noun classifier is essentially when you're pointing to something. You're wanting to define or talk about something in the singular. It's similar to how we would use the word the in English. You're referring to a specific thing both parties know about. Let's look at some examples. So, lo jay, the house. To ning, the person. Ja lo bi zi, the illustration. The second time we would use a noun classifier is in the demonstrative singular. It's when you use a preposition or a pointing word, pointing to one thing. So we're talking about something similar to number 1, but let's look at an example and it'll make more sense how it's different. So first of all, lo jay no, this house. Lo dong di, that mountain over there. Number 3, with a possessive, always in the singular. So when you're talking about something that belongs to somebody, but you're talking about one thing that belongs to somebody, we would use a different specific classifier, jaw, when you're talking about multiple things. But that's for another subject. So let's look at an example. Le, lo jay, their house. Gu, to po nia, my wife. So we're referring to one thing that belongs to someone. We would use a noun classifier with numbers when we refer to numbers of things. So for example, a lo jay, 2 houses. Plau tu ning, 4 people. Example number 5, we use noun classifiers after quantifiers. Quantifiers are words that refer to an amount without saying what number that amount is. So the examples will help it make sense what quantifiers are. For example, dao lo jay, many houses. Ding fa, look out. Here's a common place people make mistakes when they're learning Hmong. Cua, or every, is an example of a quantifier word. Every, all. When you use that word, it must be followed by a classifier almost exclusively. Many people will say cua bei, but bei is not a noun classifier. So when you say cua, it must be followed by a noun classifier. Bei cua do, cua ling cua do. Be careful, this is a common mistake. Finally, when you ask a question where the answer is a number or a definite noun. So for example, da du, which tool? The answer is da go, the tool by you. Bei zhe ling, how many people? A ling, 2 people. So to review, we use noun classifiers when 1, you're using what is essentially the word the in English, making a definite reference. 2, when you use demonstrative singular words or pointing words, prepositions. 3, with the possessive always in the singular. 4, with a numeral. 5, after a quantifier word. Quantifier is a word that talks about an amount without being specific, like many or much or every or all. and 6 when asking a question where the answer is a numeral or a definite noun. I hope this explanation was helpful and easy to understand. If you want to find out more, there are links to other resources in the comments section below. If you have any questions, comments, etc., please leave them in the comments section below and make sure to subscribe. Thank you.